My name's Kirk Zeller, and I learned a number of years ago when I used to get up in front of people and talk about Japan. I would oftentimes I'd look in the audience and I'd see people looking at their program and looking up again and thinking, what the heck could this guy possibly know about Japan? So these days I like to start off the talk with what would I know about Japan. So growing up in the 1980s, every day, almost all I heard on the radio when I was working in the fields in the tractor and in trucks was, Japan's taking over the world. It's impossible to sell American products in Japan. I couldn't deal with that. Like, it can't be impossible to sell American products in Japan. I'm going to go to Japan and I'm going to figure out how to do that. So I chose the university I went to based on one that had multiple exchange programs to Japan. And I ended up spending most of my undergraduate study in Japan. And then I felt like I wanted to take it a step further. So I joined a Japanese medical device company as a heart valve sales rep, which I thought, oh my God, this is like the greatest thing ever. Straight out of university, I'm a heart valve sales rep. What I didn't realize was it was a monoleaflet heart valve. Anybody who knows the heart valve field will know that even 20 years ago, a monoleaflet heart valve was considered outdated technology. So that guy would seem like this great job running around Japan, trying to sell heart valves, and it was the greatest experience of my career because everything after that was very easy. So I went on and had the opportunity to launch a lot of products in Japan. Spent the first part of my career working in Japan. Gradually, having learned the business, I progressed into doing a lot of business development transactions for medical device sector between the US and Japan. And so looked at probably launching 50 plus different product portfolios in Japan. So this has really kind of developed into my area of expertise. And 20 some years ago, second university I went to in Japan, I met this gentleman, David Smith. Out of university, he and I joined the same medical device company. He proceeded to spend the rest of his career in Japan launching medical devices. And we'd always kind of talked about starting a company together and, to help companies wanting to launch in Japan and Asia. And finally, we did that. So I think most people, when they think about the Japanese medical device market, particularly in previous years, they think about this. It's a black box, impossible to understand. How do you crack that market? Heard horror stories from all their friends who really struggled to get things moving in Japan. Things have changed. So there have been a lot of positive developments. What you probably heard about in the past was, it takes forever to get approval in Japan. That's true. It still takes a long time, but it takes a lot less time. So they've done a couple really big things. One is in a 10-year period, they more than tripled the reviewers that review the submissions in Japan. Another big thing they did is they switched the reviewing from the Pharmaceutical and Medical Devices Agency. Many of the things are now reviewed by third parties. So these two things helped speed up the time to market of medical devices in Japan. Additionally, a lot more products these days are being approved without doing a clinical study in Japan. 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was a foregone conclusion that if you're an implantable medical device, you're going to have to do a clinical study in Japan. There are a lot of cases now where companies have been able to successfully get around that. I'm working on 3 of them right now. We're working to negotiate to not have to do a clinical study in Japan based on data from the United States study. And there's more advocacy groups advocating for change in Japan. The U.S. has driven some of this change through some of the pressure that we've put on Japan to make changes. And also, there's a lot more resources than there used to be. When I was first working in Japan, there weren't the number of consultancies like ours that focus on market access, the regulatory or reimbursement firms. There are a lot of resources out there that didn't exist. So these are very positive developments to make it a little bit easier and achievable to get into the Japanese market. Additionally, that's a big one. Prime Minister Abe is very keen on fostering the development of a medical device industry in Japan, and at the same time, making some reforms to the Japanese healthcare. So Japan does take a while to get to market, but why do you want to go to Japan? Well, most of us probably, a lot of us in this room, I work at medical device companies, probably a lot here in California. If you have a really great cutting-edge technology, particularly if it's already got an insurance category, it can be a great market. U.S. does really well, and U.S. companies do really well in Japan. We dominate the space for particularly advanced medical devices. It's still the second largest market in the world. Sometimes people refer to China as being the second largest, and certainly from a total market opportunity, it is definitely the second largest. From an attainable right now today, can you penetrate the market perspective? Japan is still the second largest. As I mentioned, the current administration is really keen on making some changes. A big thing that makes Japan attractive right now is the size of the aging population. So U.S. has about 2.3, 2.5 times as many people as Japan, depending on what statistics you look at. However, the number of people over 65 in Japan and the U.S. is nearly identical. That's how big the aging population in Japan is. So there's still a lot of growth in a lot of areas that are driven by the aging population, orthopedics, et cetera. And another aspect people often don't think about, but if you get into Japan, start developing Japan, the data there is very good. Anybody who's done clinical studies in Japan know you don't lose patients to follow up. Those patients are very compliant. They do what the doctor says. So it is a great place to gather data. Some quick overview of healthcare in Japan. Basically, there is no private insurance market in Japan. There's essentially one payer. And if you have, for example, an implantable device where there's already an insurance category and your device is way better than everybody else's, it's a great market. There's a set price for certain implantables. Doesn't matter who you are. There's a set price for that implantable. So the physician essentially can pick whatever device they feel best. Little to no negotiation on price because the price is set. So another challenge you often face with Japan is kind of understanding the market. And a lot of times people will be in negotiations with a potential Japanese distributor, and they'll be saying things like, we need a better margin, and you'll be saying things like, but that's the margin we're giving our European distributors. Legitimately, it's an expensive place to do business. So you have a country that in theory, it's roughly the size of California, roughly the size of this state, with about half the US population packed into that little state, with the greatest public transport system in the world. We would not logically conclude that it's the perfect place for a few very efficient, very specialized hospitals doing high volume of cases. This is not the case at all. We have a large number of hospitals in Japan, each doing a small number of cases. I remember when I was doing a lot of in-service for heart valves, I'd look at the statistics before I'd go into a case and see there was a physician who would do 1 or 2 cases a year. Yet they still did those 1 or 2 cases a year. So it makes it an expensive place to do business, particularly if you're in many devices, the expectation is you put stock on the inventory, or you put inventory on the shelves of all these hospitals at or if you're not direct, at your distributor's expense. So legitimately, they do have a huge amount invested in inventory. And there's the expectation by a lot of the hospitals that you'll have a local sales office. So many of these large distributors in a country the size of California will have 20, 25 sales offices, staffed with people, inventory on the shelves. So it is definitely an expensive place to do business. Then you don't just have your national distributor that distributes directly to the hospital. All the products are flowing through a sub-distributor in almost every case. They act as the billing consolidator. Sometimes they help out in surgery. They're part of the system. They're not going away. There's lots of American companies that thought, oh, we don't need those. Let's just get rid of them. They're not going away. It's part of the system. It's part of the way it works. So the ingredients to success in Japan, well, ordinarily when I do this talk, it's usually an hour-long talk, and I spend a lot of time talking about regulatory and reimbursement. This is generally the pitfall. It's generally where companies go in ill-advised, make some kind of muck-up, and struggle to get to market or never get to market. But we have a very limited schedule today, so I'm going to focus on the sales aspect of it. So assuming you got approval, you got a commercially viable reimbursement, what is it going to take to succeed in selling products in Japan? Well, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the classes of device, there's a product-specific reimbursement. So if you are kind of fall into Me Too category, maybe weak on the Me Too, probably not going to be a great market for you. they're not competing on price, and that's your only way of driving share in a lot of other markets, probably not going to be a great market for you. In some medical consumables that don't have specific reimbursement that are covered out of the procedure fee, this may not be the case. But for implantable devices, you better hope you have the best device. And if you do, you will probably be rewarded handsomely. You need a motivated and capable distributor. So you need a distributor that has relationships with those call points, exhibits at all the meetings, whatever the meetings are specific to your technology. But they also need to be motivated. Again, going back to the comment about margins, you need to make sure that they are duly motivated to get out there and sell and will make an investment in selling your product in Japan. And you need effective market development initiatives. So what a lot of companies do is they think, we'll sign that distribution agreement and we'll wait for the orders to come in. They'll have to place that a big initial stocking order, wait for that to come in, and we'll give them some tools, maybe do a couple WebExes, and we'll wait for them to start selling products and the wire transfers to come in. Well, if you're a company here in California, the odds are you've got a cutting edge technology. It's probably not just another Me Too or next generation whatever. It's probably something that when you first look at it, you're like, what is this? And those kinds of technologies, if you just leave it up to the distributor, they're not likely to do very well. You really need to be there side by side, working with them to develop the market and to raise awareness among the different physician groups that may be stakeholders in whatever your product is. And you need a market-specific plan. Cutting and pasting your US plan and assuming it's going to work in Japan usually doesn't do it. But the biggest thing of all is Mindshare. So as I look back close to 25 years of seeing products launched in Japan, being involved with product launches in Japan, this is, assuming you get through regulatory and reimbursement, this is one of the areas where I see companies fail. They just think, we'll leave it up to the distributor. Well, leaving it up to the distributor usually is not a very good recipe just for success. So you need to drive mind share with the distributor. They may have 20 or 30 bags in your specialty, or products in their bag in your specialty. How do you know that they're bringing your product out of their bag? Well, the best way to do that is to get over there. In the first couple of years in particular, put somebody on the ground, send some people over there, have people like us help you, get some kind of support on the ground, some expertise on the ground to drive the mind share. If you have somebody in Japan who's saying, okay, calling up the distributor, I'm going to go, and travel with your reps in Osaka next week, Fukuoka the week after that, Sapporo the week after that. If you're there with the reps, they're going to be pulling your product out of the bag. And the other thing is, and the most important thing, if you're there with them, when they get that objection from the doctor that they don't know how to handle, you can step in and handle that. After you do that a few times, they get used to it, and you can pull off the training wheels, and they can go on their own. But to really be successful in Japan, you ultimately need to work really closely with whoever your distribution partners are, or if you're a large company and you have direct sales, you still need to send the experts over to help with the initial market development phase of the business. This is our firm, Asia Med Market Access. We help companies get into the medical device market in Japan. And I don't know if we have time for questions. I'm happy to take questions, happy to talk to anybody over lunch.
We do have time for questions.
Excellent.
Do we have any from the room? I will start. For someone who has not previously considered the Japanese market, what would you say is the first step? Contact you, of course. What is the second? You're a very easy laugh, Kirk. Thank you. What is the second step?
Well, I mean, the first step really is to do some basic research into the market opportunity. Maybe go out and meet with some KOLs, or as some of the physicians from Japan come to your exhibit at international meetings, speak to them, look at what the regulatory pathway would be, look at what kind of products are on the market, what kind of reimbursement precedent you have, and the competitors. I mean, those are the kind of the ingredients. If all that seems to make sense, then most likely you'll want to proceed. Yep.
Hi, my name is Nathan. A quick question. So, in Japan, what type of products you think would be a good product to try and push that will have a good success? Because one thing is that their aging population is very big, so yeah. I would assume that would be a good field to try and push products to. But what type of products you think?
Yeah, okay, certainly products that can be used in the aging population. A lot of the orthopedics, spine, those types of products those companies are doing very well. Cardiology's always been a big business in Japan. When I worked in Japan, the number of interventional revascularizations to surgical was about 10 to 1, where at the same time period in the US it was 3 to 1. So anything in interventional procedures is oftentimes quite good. They're adverse to surgery, so tend to strongly prefer interventional type procedures over open surgery or even minimally invasive surgery. And again, as I had mentioned earlier, usually if you have a commodity type item, or if you have like kind of a me too of something, it's a tough market. You really need to have differentiated products to do extremely well, with the exception of some of the stuff that are covered out of procedure fees. Sometimes that's more price competitive, and you can actually, if you can manufacture at a lower price point, sometimes you can compete.
Hi, Chris Knorr. Curious about digital healthcare and kind of internet or IoT connected medical devices. Can you give any insights into the challenges or opportunities?
Well, I'm sure the opportunities are huge. I wish I could tell you, give you 3 examples of successes in Japan in that space, but unfortunately I don't know of any yet. I know there are some companies, one of the gentlemen here, I think was sitting right here earlier, was talking about smoking cessation. I just met with a startup right before I left Japan that wanted advice on, they had a digital health app for that, that wanted some advice on that. So I know there's companies kind of looking at the market, but I don't know, within my circle of friends, I don't know that any of them succeeded as of yet, but there's no doubt an opportunity.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Zeller. Thank you, Kirk.